Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and start to go over the test creation process in Blackboard. Let me just zoom in for you guys. Can you all see it well? Or is my screen a little bit too large? That's it. Okay.
It looks good. Oh.
There we go. So creating tests in Blackboard typically begins in the control panel. This is the section of your course that students don't have access to. From here, we're going to go to course tools and then test surveys and pools. As you can see, Blackboard gives you kind of three options when you get to this page. Tests, which are the online assessments you're probably all familiar with. And if you're not, they're really no different than a face-to-face test, just facilitated through Blackboard. You have the option for surveys, which are ungraded tests that do not impact the student's performance and are really there for you to get feedback about the course. I know you have course evals at the end of the semester, but it might be a good idea to have some surveys throughout so you can see how students are liking the course and kind of see if you have to do any course correction. And lastly, there are pools. Pools are not like tests or surveys in the sense that when you work in a pool, you're really creating questions for yourself. Questions created in pools can be used in tests and surveys, but cannot be seen by the students until they're built into them, which I'll go over in just a few minutes. When creating tests on Blackboard, I do recommend creating pools instead of just a regular test. And the reason for this is that as you build pools, you'll get a large question bank that will let you kind of customize the test as you see fit, or take advantage of some of Blackboard's more advanced features like random question blocks or question sets. We're going to go over that in a little bit as well, but for now I want to go over building a pool. So again, to get here, I went to the control panel, course tools, test surveys and pools, and then pools. When I want to build a new pool, I'm just going to click this build pool button. For now, I'll call this 19 question pool. You can add a description to the pool, although it's completely optional. It might help you just kind of remember exactly what you were going for with this one. So and instructions are really only useful if you're co-instructing or if there are other instructors in the course. Otherwise, I typically just skip them. With your question pool created, you're going to go to something that's called a pool canvas. This is like the box that has all the questions for the pool. And the best part is, it's also where you can go and create new questions for the pool. As you can see, Blackboard offers several different types of questions, and they can really be split up into two categories: objective and subjective questions. What you want to think about is, how much grading do you personally want to do? You want Blackboard to do all the grading for you, or do you not mind going into the test and kind of grading some short answers here and there? If you want Blackboard to grade for you, you want the, Molly, correct me if I'm wrong because it gets mixed up, the objective questions, the ones that have the answers that are just A or B or C or D.
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. If you don't mind grading yourself, you can utilize some of these subjective questions like the short answer or essay questions. Of the objective questions, the ones you're probably most familiar with will be multiple choice, which is just like a Scantron test, or multiple answer, where students can actually select 2 or more answers that contribute to the correct response. There are some question types that I strongly recommend against. I know this is going to sound silly coming from the Blackboard guy, but fill in the blank and fill in the multiple blanks are better off not used. If you want students to provide a short answer, I would do a short answer question instead. The problem with fill in the blanks is that Blackboard has trouble distinguishing between answers like cat and cats. If there's any chance a student might add a plural to the word, you have to put in both instances, otherwise Blackboard's going to say, wrong. Save yourself time, save yourself effort. Do not use the fill in the blanks or fill in the multiple blanks. Short answer works just fine. For the sake of the training, I'm going to create a few different question types. And to start off, I'm going to go with old reliable. I'm going to go with multiple choice. So when you click multiple choice, it brings you to the create/edit multiple choice question page. Here you can add a question title, which is really helpful for organization purposes. In this case, it is completely optional. However, I might just say question title is intro Q1. And then the question text is where you can actually put the question itself, including graphics or videos, although not recommended if you're in a course, like a nursing course that has questions about anatomy. You can put up a picture and ask students to name like which bone is this or which body part is that. In this case, I'm just going to say which animal is man's best friend. After typing the question, you have options, although honestly, usually the default works pretty well. The only one that I usually recommend is show answers in random order. This goes to the test integrity aspect, where it's an online test, so you want to make sure it's kind of randomized so students are less prone to kind of talking and sharing answers. And again, that's what lockdown browser is going to be for. And again, that's in the future. But for now, remember this little option here, show answers in random order. It can be a lifesaver. Down below, you have your answers. And Blackboard defaults to 4 possible answers, although you can use the drop-down to select up to 99. Or, oh, they up to now, up to 100.
Wow, because that would make it fun to make.
So the reason I've actually found a good use case for up to 100 possible answers, and that's in a survey. Say if you want to nominate a student for a representative or something like that, you can list all the possible options and have students select which one of those 100 they want. In a regular test though, 4 to 5 usually works, but you notice there's no option for 2 or 3. I'm going to show you a little trick. If you have a question that only has 3 possible answers, all you have to do is remove this top one. And now you see that we can select 3 from the drop-down list. So just like any other text field on Blackboard, you do have access to this expanded text editor. It's really not necessary for the most part, but again, if you want to, you can add things like images or videos. For now though, because the question is, which animal is man's best friend? I'm gonna write down some answers here. So I'll do cat, dog, and parrot. You notice that next to each of these answers, this is the little circle, and that's what you indicate for the correct answer. In this case, I'm going to select answer 2, dog. After typing the answers and selecting the correct one, you can scroll down and provide feedback. Again, this is optional, and in many cases, students may not even see it unless you set the test options for that. Another teaser for what's to come later on. For the correct response feedback, you might want to say something like, yes, great job. And if it's incorrect, you can say, that's wrong. Please consult chapter 2 in the book. Something to guide the students so they can find the correct answer on their own. And when you're finished, you can either press submit to return to the test canvas, or submit and create another to automatically create another multiple choice question.
Steve?
Yep.
Question for you, if I may. If I'm providing feedback, does it post it immediately after they submit their quizzes?
It does not. It's determined when deploying the test. That is, when you make the test available to students, you have an option to set the level of feedback that they receive, as well as when they receive it. By default, after students submitted an attempt, all they can see is their score and which answers they got credit for. You can also, we'll go over this in just a few minutes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Nope, it's okay. I get really excited about this, so I just want to guide myself back. So as you can see, I pressed submit and create another, and it brought me right back to this create edit multiple choice question. If I wanted to, I can just cancel and go right back to the canvas though. So now that we're at this canvas pool, you can see that I have my first question right here, and to the left now, we have question types. This will show you each type of question that you created, so you can filter out which questions get shown. To show you this in action, let's create a multiple answer question. Which flavor of with these type of questions, you don't necessarily have to have multiple correct answers, although that's mean and can actually be kind of a trick question just because of the formatting. In this case, I'm going to have 3 correct answers. So with multiple answers, I can actually allow partial credit. Or if you leave that blank, you can have it so students need to get all 3 answers in order to get credit for the question. My recommendation, actually don't allow partial credit. What I found is if you allow partial credit on a multiple answer question, if students selected all the possible answers, they'd get 100%. It's not something students know about, but it's also not something that you want to run into. So just like before, Blackboard defaults to 4 possible correct answers and has box next to each of those. So given that I talked about flavors of Neapolitan, I'm going to go vanilla. That's correct. Strawberry is correct. Pistachio, which is not correct. So in this case, I'm going to leave it unchecked. And chocolate, which I'll have checked. And just like before, I'm going to add some quick feedback. And some incorrects. So, and submit. So now we can see that I have 2 questions in the pool, and the question type can let me filter out so I can see just multiple answer both multiple answer and multiple choice, or just multiple choice. So now we have a very brief question pool created. I'm going to pause here to take any questions. Okay. In that case, I'm going to move on. We have a question pool. Now, what can we do with it? The answer is, let's make a test. When you're done with the pool and ready to make it into a test, you can either click OK on the bottom right, or you can go down to the control panel, course tools, test surveys and pools, and then tests. I already have a few tests in here, but I'm going to build a new one by clicking build test. And just like before, I'm going to call this one 819 training session. I do recommend adding descriptions and instructions to your test, as it provides students with a way of knowing what to expect before they click begin. This can be something as simple as, this test has 2 questions that are multiple choice and multiple answer. You may not use your textbook. And respond to lockdown browser will be required. After adding the description and instructions, click submit, and you're brought to the test canvas. If it looks identical as the pool canvas, it's because it is. You have all the same question types, and you have the option to reuse questions. Reusing questions is how you can pull questions from either existing tests or question pools. Because we just built questions as a question pool, I'm going to reuse question, and I'm going to click find questions. Oh, and Blackboard will pop up with the little, sorry, I have to share full screen now. When you do the find questions, it's going to have a separate pop-up, and you can choose from the side here, question pools or tests. In this case, I'm going to click pools, and I'm going to find that 819 question pool and select that. And as you can see, the 2 questions I created pop up right here. And if you ever forget what a question says or what the answers are, you can click this little pop-out button, and Blackboard will give you a preview. This is a great way to kind of review questions the day after you make them, just in case it's kind of late and you forget if you selected A or B. Preview it right here. Okay, now to select questions, you can select them individually by clicking the box to the left of the question, or you can click this box up top to the left of the question text to select them all at the same time. With my question selected, I'm going to click submit. And you can see that Blackboard has them added automatically to my test canvas. You notice that I have 2 questions, and by default, each question is worth 10 points. You can adjust this individually by clicking within that point field and entering the amount that you want. Notice you can even make it an extra credit question, so it doesn't hurt them, it can only help. And then clicking submit once Blackboard behaves. Alternatively, if you wanted to update all questions at the same time, select all is an option right here. It's kind of hiding away. Then you can do whatever amount you want in the points field and update. Now, let's take a look at some of the other fun features that you can use because of creating questions and question pools. Once again, I'm going to go up to reuse question, and this time I'm going to create a random block. What random blocks do is they let you not only select the questions you want to use, so for this, I'm going to select the pool and select which question types. If the pool has multiple choice and multiple answer, you can actually just select only the multiple answer, only multiple choice, or all pool questions. I highly recommend just kind of going in and playing around with this yourself. But after selecting the question types, if you click submit, you can see the random block was saved and it's at the bottom of the test canvas. What the random block does is it lets you select the possible questions and then tell Blackboard how many of those questions each student's going to receive per attempt. So if you have a question pool that is like 30 questions long, you can tell Blackboard of those 30 questions, each student will receive 10 of those questions per attempt. And the best thing is, if you allow multiple attempts, those questions will change every time. The larger the pool, the much more unlikely any student's going to get the same test. As this is all about online testing and you may not be there to proctor or watch them, having that option to randomize the test that thoroughly is going to be awesome. For now, I'm just going to leave it at one question to display, and each question is only worth 10 points. With this, I have a test that has 3 total questions that's worth 30 points. What I'm going to do now is click OK and stop here if there are any questions. Yep, Lisa, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking to practical applications of this. So if you teach, the same course pretty regularly, you could have a pool that says, say, finance exam 1, and you could create a pool of questions for that particular set of material or a particular chapter and keep adding and changing. And I think your point about being able then to have, a larger pool and a randomized option really would lead to integrity, even short of doing like a lockdown browser.
Exactly. That's actually a great point. If you teach a course over and over, and it's usually the same course every semester, every year, the more you teach, the larger your question pool can get. And it's really going to do a lot for the test integrity. With that said, there may be times you want to change the questions in the pools themselves. So it's finance. So maybe one year you want to change up the numbers just in case it gets leaked and students are trying to share it with the underclassmen. In that case, you can always go back to the pool, click the drop down to the right of the name, select edit, find the question you want to change. Again, the drop down, and select edit, and you can change the question itself, and it will update not only in the question pool, but in whichever test you have it linked to.
Oh, that could be really helpful, because that way, once you create the test, just by editing the pools, they automatically have an update. So you're not doing multiple steps if you have multiple exams or quizzes.
Exactly. And it's also good to know if, say you accidentally miskeyed an answer, if you were to update it in the question pool, it would update it in the test. And if the test has any attempts, it would automatically regrade it in Blackboard as well. So it saves you that step of having to go into the grade center.
Oh, that's great. And then And then just kind of to follow up, so once the students would take this, then like any assignment in Blackboard, this then gets created as an item in the grade book, which you can then weight or do whatever points you want.
Exactly. Although you can't do whatever points you want necessarily. That's going to be up to the test canvas and how many points you make per question.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. So now the next step in the test creation process is a step called deploying the exam. What this means is you're going to link it to a content area so students can actually access and take the test. If you're familiar with Blackboard tests in the past, you're going to have to pay attention because something has changed for this semester. For this step, I'm going to go into the testing folder. It's not an optional, it's not a mandatory folder. It's one I use for myself. Makes it clear. Now, in the past, you used to be able to go to assessments and test. As of a couple weeks ago, test packed up and moved, and now it's under tools. I don't know why. I didn't make this decision. We actually have a communication with Blackboard to figure out what's going on. But for now, just think tests, we're going to tools, and then test. When you click that button, you do have the option of creating a new test or adding an existing test. Again, I always recommend creating the test by creating question pools first and then adding the pools to a test. But the create button is right there just in case it's a quick, like 10 question multiple choice. With the desired test selected, I'm going to click submit. And now we are at the test options page. As you can see, Blackboard has automatically added my test description to the link description and populated the test description field. If you want, and what I usually recommend, is you can show the test description to students before they begin the test. Although it's a little bit redundant, redundancy is good. The more students know, the less they can say, I didn't realize that. Get rid of the questions and nip them in the bud. One of the first options you get is open a test in a new window. What this does is it will actually open the test in a new tab, not necessarily a new window. And that tab will be devoted to just the test. It won't have any of the side navigation that can be distracting. For that reason, I usually recommend opening up in a new window just so students don't have the option of misclicking on one of the links here. Test availability. Always, 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 please select yes. Even if it's not going to be available right away, you need to make sure this is yes. Otherwise, it's never going to be available. We'll go over an option a little bit later about how you can click yes here, but still have it show up in a few weeks. You also have the option of having Blackboard create a new announcement for this test. This announcement is not created right away and will only go out when the test is made available. If you already plan to make an announcement for the students saying, this week we'll have a test on Wednesday, you don't need to make a new announcement. However, if you don't make regular announcements, it might be a good idea to click yes. Multiple attempts. By a show of hands, has anybody here ever taken an online test and then got kicked out halfway through and had trouble going back in? So in those situations, if you allow for multiple attempts, you can kind of build in a fail-safe where if that happens, students can go in and take another attempt. Remember, if you use question pools and a random question block, that's going to make it so even if they go in again, that test might be completely different than what they had before. So it's not only about test integrity, it's also about ease of makeup exams. And if you do allow multiple attempts, you have this drop down, so you can select the last graded attempt, highest grade, lowest grade, or first grade. It's up to you. I'm going to stick with the default last graded. Forced completion. Please, please, please do yourself a favor and do not select forced completion. What forced completion does is it requires students to take the test in one sitting, which means once they click begin, they can't leave and come back, which is awesome until they have a network problem. With forced completion on, if students experience a network hiccup for even 1 second, they can be kicked out of the test and won't be able to go back in to complete it. That could be covered with multiple attempts, or what you can do instead is set a timer. If you set a timer, students will have a set amount of time to take the test after they click begin, and this timer cannot be paused. Once students enter, it will start ticking down, and even if they leave, it will continue to tick down. So if they lose connection, they can come right back in, or if they start a test and realize, oh, I have to go out, I have to do something for 5 minutes, they can leave and come back 5 minutes later. Lockdown browser will make sure that they're staying honest though. So for what I do is set timer. It's only 3 questions. I'm going to do 5 minutes. And I'm going to have auto submit on. So as soon as the time ticks down to 0, Blackboard will kick them out of the attempt and submit it on their behalf. You can't have it off, and Blackboard will let you know if they're late. The problem is you didn't have to grade it. So if you have a test full of objective questions, so Blackboard does the grading for you, having this off is self-defeating. Now, remember how just a couple minutes ago I said always select yes for make available? Here's why. Our good friends display after and display until. These will let you control exactly when the test is available for students to take. And remember, you can have display after, but you do not need to have a display until. That's optional. I have them both checked for today though, just for training purposes. Passwords, optional, haven't really seen them used at all. However, if it's a makeup test, then you might want to just add a quick password and send it to the student. It's an easy way to control who has access to it. Test availability exceptions. Has anybody here ever had a student who required time and a half due to disability services? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Oh, perfect. If a student requires time and a half or needs some sort of accommodation, test availability exceptions will be your best friends. Using this, you can add the student, in this case, I'll select myself, and then modify any of the options you set above. So say a student requires time and a half, you can give them around up to 8 minutes. If a student's unable to make the test on the specific day, you can use this calendar button, which looks more like a calculator, and then set custom display after and display until dates for this student. The reason why this is so important is not only for accommodations, but for making life easier on you. If you use test availability exceptions, you do not need to make a separate test for the 1 or 2 students who require time and a half. You can do everything in this one test and just add the accommodations here. And again, you can add multiple users, and these users can have different options. So it really does customize it per student. In this case, I'm gonna say maybe Dave needs double time. Give him 10 minutes. I'm not gonna change the availability. He's gonna have it with the rest of the course, but he's gonna have a little bit more time. And due dates. Due dates can be really helpful as they add the test to the students' calendars. And it can even let you know if a student submitted a test late. However, if you use due dates, please make sure to update them every semester, especially if you reuse the course. The problem with due dates is that if you copy this course and you don't change the date, students might enter and see that they already have late submissions. It scares them. It's going to get you emails. It's not the best. Personally, though, I do like due dates, so I'm just going to set it for tonight at end of day. You also have the sub option. Do not allow students to start the test if the due date has passed. Warning. If you have a test availability exception that has availability after the initial due date, this option will override that. This option will make it so this student cannot take the test at all. It's oftentimes better just to leave that unchecked. Self-assessment options. Leave them alone. You can always hide the test in the grade center if you wanted to. But if you hide results for this test completely, there's no way for you to ever see the scores. Even if this test is just for students to practice, it's always nice for you to see how they're doing, and if there's any areas that you yourself need to go into more detail about. As such, I find this option to be minimally useful. Molly, not to put you on the spot, have you ever found a purpose for this one?
Which one? I'm sorry.
Hide results for this test completely from the instructor and grade center?
No, I can't even imagine why you would do that. Unless you were doing a self-assessment kind of a thing that only the student needs to see, but I still can't imagine that that would be something that you would want to do on a test.
Agreed. Even if it's a self-assessment, like I said, it's important information for you as the instructor, so you can.
Steve, I think you froze.
See if there's any.
Sorry, we didn't hear that part of your.
I was saying. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. What I was saying before was that this is a great option. This is a bad option because even if you're looking for how students are doing, hiding the results doesn't tell you if they're struggling or if you're excelling in certain areas of your course. It's a positive reinforcement that we all kind of like. Show test results and feedback to students. Remember when we were making question pools and I said that you can create your own feedback? Here's where it comes into play. By default, Blackboard will let students see their score per question after they submit the test. If, however, you just want them to see their score, you can uncheck this box. However, you have the second drop down here, and this lets you kind of customize when they can have access to more information, more feedback. So you can choose on a specific date, after due date, after availability end date, or after attempts are graded. A lot of these are kind of self-explanatory. So on a specific date, you can have Blackboard kind of show whichever feedback you select. After the due date, if you use one, Blackboard will automatically show this feedback. After the availability end date, the display until, Blackboard will show the feedback. Or, my personal favorite, after attempts are graded. This option will let you show all the test feedback only after every student has an attempt on the test. Again, if we're talking about test integrity, this is the best way to ensure that students are not taking the test and sharing the answers with their peers. So for the sake of training, I'm going to click after attempts are graded, and I'm going to say, okay, every student has taken the test. They can see the score per question. I'll even let them see the correct answers in the submitted answers. And as a bonus, that feedback that I wrote, they can view that too. Show incorrect questions, it's up to you. It's not the most useful tool. All it does is tell you, provide a visual cue if a student got a question correct or incorrect. There's no harm in checking it though. Test presentation. This really kind of comes down to how you want students to view the test. Do you want them to see it like they would a paper test, where they get access to every question and they can kind of look at them and use the test taking strategies that they've developed since grade school? Or is this going to be more like a certification test, where they can only see the question, one question at a time, and each answer is final? For the most part, I like to do all at once. I find it can really be kind of stress relieving to review the test, answer the questions I know, and then use time management to think hard about the questions I'm having trouble with. Whereas one at a time can cause students to kind of rush through just to make sure that they have enough time to answer everything.
And can I say one other thing about one at a time?
Yep.
If you're on Wi-Fi or whatever, if you don't have a very good connection, it takes that much time to load each question that there's a possibility that your computer might fail. The Wi-Fi might kick out.
That's true. Conversely, though, if you are on a Wi-Fi, if you select one at a time, Blackboard will save your answers each time you click to the next question. Whereas all at once, that has a risk of kind of timing out if you're taking too long. So it's a trade-off. For the most part, though, all at once is going to be perfect, especially if you randomize the questions. So the question pool can let you randomize the question order, provide random questions, and then this just adds a second layer of randomization. So even if somehow students still got the same questions from the question pool, this will ensure that they're in a different order. So if you have 30 questions and select only 10, super unlikely that any student's ever going to get the same question, same test, even as you teach multiple semesters. So the option set, I'm going to click submit. You can see the test pops up right here. So test options, we covered a lot. I'm going to pause again for any questions. Nope. Okay. So now the question is, we have the test deployed. Are we done, or is there something else that we can do to help enhance the test? And for that, I want to segue over to Respondent's Lockdown Browser. Lockdown Browser serves as a separate program from your regular web browser and locks you into using only the university's Blackboard site. If you launch Lockdown Browser, you can only go to your courses and you can only take the tests. I have a copy of it on my desktop here, so I'll launch it right now. And then I realized that I can't do this for the session because Zoom is not supported by Lockdown Browser. Lockdown Browser will require students to close any programs that they feel can contribute to cheating. This means if they have VMware open, they might have to close that. Zoom, if they have that open, they're going to have to close that. Any chat program open, they're going to have to close that. Lockdown browser really does secure the test environment. Additionally, lockdown browser cannot be closed until after the test is submitted. So once students open the test in lockdown browser, all their screen is going to be the test, and that's all they can even access on their computer until they submit the attempt. But the question is, as an instructor, how do you assign lockdown browser to a test? And for that, the first step is doing what we just did, creating the test and deploying it on Blackboard. After deploying it, you need to go down to the control panel, course tools, and then Respondus lockdown browser. This will show you a list of every test that you have deployed in your course, as well as their status, where if they require lockdown browser, and if they require the optional proctoring. We're going to go over proctoring in just a little bit, but it's a feature that I really like. So to assign lockdown browser at all, I'm going to find the test, in this case, test 819. I'm going to click the drop down to the left of it, and I'm going to click settings. And here, I'm just going to require Respondus lockdown browser. Sorry, I just received a tornado warning. That's fun. So lockdown browser settings. I'm going to click the option require response lockdown browser. I'm not going to set a password. And I am actually going to click advanced settings to lock students into the browser until exam is completed. And I guess I will provide a password if they contact you. Professor, I have to go. I can't finish the test. Can you please give me the password so I can leave? I don't recommend sending password as password, but for the sake of training. Option allows students to take this exam when using an iPad. I don't really recommend it. I don't like having students take tests on mobile devices. They really should be taking tests on either laptop or desktop. Allow access to specific external web domains. I've actually seen this need to be used once. If you provide students with like a news article from the New York Post, you might actually have to allow the New York Post to be a web domain that they can click out to. If we have any math instructors, enable calculator on the toolbar. You can even choose standard or scientific. So Lisa, this is going to be a great tip for you. Make sure you go to advanced settings and enable calculator.
Yeah, my issue is when I teach finance or some statistical courses, we need to use Excel or SPSS. Will that be something that will be available? I mean, we lock down, say, the browser, but will they be able to, if they have a package installed, say the Microsoft Office suite, or they're using, say, the VPN to get to SPSS, is this something that we can use with lockdown browser?
So in that case, I would have this option unchecked. I'm really not certain if lockdown browser will still let them close the test and open up Excel. Molly, do you know off the top of your head? Okay,
You know, I'm just kind of having used this lockdown type browsers through, say, online homework managers that come with the test. Just not all my courses have that have that option, which is the reason I'm attending today. I know when I say use a homework manager through one of the publishers, when we lock down the browser, they lock down the browser. But if they have, say, Excel on their computers, they're able to access this. But I'm kind of iffy right now because, Steve, where you have this just a calculator, but there's not an option for software. So I'm not sure quite what the definition would be if I wanted them to use a package like Excel or SPSS.
Right.
Hey, Steve,
Yep.
what would happen if they took the test in an incognito window and logged in that way and then had another screen, the rest of their computer open? So you log into Blackboard and the test is configured with lockdown browser that way, doing incognito, and then in a separate, then you might still free up your software. It's just
Actually, if the test requires lockdown browser, you can't use incognito. Lockdown browser is a separate web browser altogether. It's not even an add-on.
okay, that's actually good to know. So even if you launch incognito and you've logged into Worcester State and Blackboard, it
You won't
won't
be able to
launch.
take the
It
test
won't
at
launch
all.
in lockdown browser on an incognito window.
Right.
Okay.
If you have lockdown browser enabled for a test and students try to access it from a regular web browser like Firefox or Chrome, even in incognito, it will ask for a password to take the test. And even if you provide them with the lockdown provided password, it's not going to work. It's actually like a decryption key. So it tells the lockdown browser, hey, here's the password, unhash this. Now they can take the test.
Now, just to kind of just follow up, Steve, is there any particular browser that they can and can't use? I know I've encountered that when I've used, say, similar products through publisher websites for testing. Do they have to use Chrome or can they use any browser they like?
So if it's a regular Blackboard test, I recommend usually Firefox, but Chrome or Safari also work. If it's lockdown browser, like I said, it's an actual web browser itself, and they'll have to download and use that.
It'd be really interesting to test this lockdown browser and launch a software and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't believe, it sounds like this new version does let students leave early. I'm just wondering how that fact works with like a time test that doesn't have forced completion, if it'll let them back in with the time remaining. I will have to get back to you all about that after some self-experimenting. But from what I understand, for the most part, is if you're using lockdown browser, just assume that their computer is locked down as well. And that's just so they can't close the browser, then pull up like the incognito window and look up the answers.
Not to interrupt your training, but we just got a tornado warning and it says to take shelter now.
Yeah, I received that one as well.
Oh, okay. And I'm on the 3rd floor. So it says get into the basement right this minute. Like, okay. Just so you know.
Right. So if I lose connection for whatever reason, or if I lose connection, we might just have to reschedule this, but we're actually almost done. So I will try to finish this up before the apocalypse happens.
Cool.
After the advanced settings, proctoring. We have an option here for a response lockdown browser to have a response monitor. What monitor does is it uses a student's webcam to watch them as they take the test, to kind of minimize the chances of them having outside help or looking at the cell phones from under the screen. If you require a response monitor, you'll always get this little about screen to tell you exactly what what it does. So students will have a specific startup sequence where they have a webcam check, they'll get the instructions, require them to upload a student photo, show their ID, and do an environment check. If you're feeling like this is a little bit big brothery, it is. Also, one thing to know is if you require a response monitor, please let students know in the syllabus and in the course that a webcam will be required for the course. Students will not be able to take a test if they do not have a webcam that works, so they can provide this information. So with this all set up, I'm going to click Save and Close. And I'm going to show you what it looks like when students take a test with monitor running. So I have this old test here. And I'm going to click the little drop down. And I'm going to say class results. Here you can see every student that took the test, the score they received on the test, how many minutes they took to complete the test, and most importantly, review priority. The review priority is kind of the judgment system that Respondus uses to tell you how suspicious the student's actions were during their attempt. So I'm going to take a look at Koplati, who has only got a 42, but has moderately high review priority. I click the plus button. It'll show you the student photo that they took, copy their student ID, so you can confirm that the actual student taking the test is the one who should be taking the test. There's not going to be any kind of mercenary out there taking the test for them. The environment video, which requires students to take and then rotate the video. And this is useful so you can just make sure that there's nobody else in the room with them, unless it's a cat. Then throughout the exam, Respondus will actually take those snapshots of anything that seems suspect. For instance, in 46 seconds into this attempt, you can see that the student looks down and away from the computer as if they're looking at their phone. It could be that they dropped their pen or pencil or anything like that, but it provides you with more information so you can make that judgment call. This can be really helpful if you have a student that usually does pretty poorly, but does amazingly on one test. If you have Respondus running, you can just kind of confirm that everything is everything's done correctly. But remember, Respondus cannot make the decisions for you. It really is up to your discretion what constitutes as suspicious and how you penalize any students that you feel might have cheated. This is just a tool to assist. It's not a decider. So I'm going to go back to the testing. And as you can see, the test 819 that I've now required Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor tells students webcam. So again, if you plan to use Monitor, put it in the syllabus, put it in the course information that a webcam will be required to take tests in this course. Okay, that pretty much wraps up the whole test creation process and using Respondus Lockdown Browser. Are there any questions or comments?
Wow, everyone's so quiet.
Hi, Steve. It's Susanna speaking. I just wanted to know if I create a test pool, will I be able to see it in the different sections of the same course?
No, the question pool you would have to bring over to the different sections. So say you develop it in section 1, but then you wanted to put it into section 2. What you would do is go down to the course tools, test surveys and pools, and then export.
Okay.
After exporting the pool package, you can go into this the new section and import pool. It's kind of like the course copy procedure. How you export the full package, then bring it into the new course.
Now, would that go for a test as well? Say, for instance, a test was created in one section. Can you export it and import it as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thanks.
And the other thing that you can do is, say you've developed the tests and pools in one section. You can also do a course copy. I know Dave Needham doesn't usually like course copies, but in this case, if you just want to quickly copy over all the tests and pools at the same time, you can do a course copy, select this new course, and then select only test surveys and pools down at the bottom. So if you do that, you can quickly bring them over to one section at a time without having to export each individually.
Thanks. Good idea.
Okay, so any other questions?
For those who have come in later after the session already started, we have been recording this, right, Steve?
Yep, the session has been recorded, so it will be made available on the CTL YouTube channel. And actually, I'm going to pause the recording here.